Hi there, Hillary here for WaterLogged on behalf of saltwateraquarium.com. After the recent passing of my cowfish Frank, in the moment I was absolutely panicking and trying to figure out what to do, and I had to remind myself, you know what, I have the tools, I know what to do. And so now that I've had some time to grieve, I thought that I would put together a video and make a list for you guys of actionable steps you can take if one of your fish gets sick. So, first comes first. If you notice any of your fish behaving abnormally, if you have the slightest inclination that they're sick, please go ahead and isolate them. Now, I'm not talking about isolating them in like a howdy box so that they can get familiar with your other fish. I'm talking about completely taking them out of your main display tank if that's possible. Now, if that is, and it's easy for you to do without stressing them out, go ahead, remove them from the tank and put them in a separate bucket using water from your display tank. Be that a clean Tupperware container or a bucket that you use for water changes, go ahead and put them in there. Make sure to keep an eye on the water temperature in there, that it doesn't get too cold for them, and go ahead and put an air stone in there so they have a little bit of water movement as well. Now, the next thing I'm going to want you to do is go ahead and test your water. Get all of those test kits out. I want you to test your ammonia, I want you to test your pH, your nitrates, and your nitrites, along with salinity if it's a saltwater tank, and your temperature. Now, you got all those done, go ahead and write those down on a piece of paper. I want you to be able to remember them for later. Now that you've done that, take a pause. I want you to take a deep breath and relax. If you're stressed out, you might miss something, or you might just get overwhelmed and it might be too much. But if you make sure that you take a deep breath and relax, you're going to get through this. Now, the next thing I want you to do after you've taken a pause is to spend a few minutes observing and watching your fish. Obviously, at this point, you've already pulled your fish from your display tank, which means you have a pretty good idea that something is wrong. But maybe as you are observing it in a smaller space, you might notice things that you may have missed before. So you could be looking for things like a pinched stomach or frayed fins. You might even see things like an ulcer on your fish. All those things are good to make note of. So on that paper that you had all of your water chemistry, go ahead and make note of any observations that you have. Now, here's the next thing that you might not be able to do if you don't have these books. I like to keep some books on hand just for reference and guidance, and one of my favorite is the Handbook for Fish Diseases. Now, the reason I like this book is because at the beginning, it's got this great flowchart that you can follow along and get a better idea of what might be wrong with your fish. Now, the next book that I have is the Marine Fish Health and Feeding Handbook. It has some fantastic photos in it that I definitely would recommend. Now, not saying that you can self-diagnose what is wrong with your fish, but these might give you a good idea of what is wrong and help you to treat it. It might be something simple that you can easily identify, such as ick, and you can treat for that at home, but a lot of times I haven't been able to find the answers in the book. I might find a secondary infection answer in here, but most of the time I need to consult a vet. Now you might be saying, Hillary, I've taken my dog and a cat to a vet, but there's no such thing as a fish vet. And I'm here to tell you that there are fish vets. If you go to fishvets.org, you can find a list of all of the fish vets across the US. And this is where I have a special surprise for you today. I have invited Dr. Jessie Sanders to join me. She is a fish veterinarian out of California, and she is going to talk to us a little bit about what you should do if your fish is sick and some of the things that you can expect. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Jessie Sanders.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jessie Sanders, owner and chief veterinarian of Aquatic Veterinary Services. Thank you so much for having me today to talk about what to do in case you suspect your fish might not be feeling that well.
All right, Dr. Sanders, I have shared my recommendations about what you should do for a sick fish, but obviously you're a professional. So what would you, as a fish veterinarian, recommend that people do if they have a sick fish?
So that's a great list of things that you put together that is pretty much what we do as a triage for any sick fish that we have. So for isolating the fish, it might be a little difficult, just depending on how your tank is set up and if you're actually able to get that individual out safely without stressing them out further. A lot of fish like to share their diseases. So certainly if you have one sick fish, you might be looking at a larger population issue. And yes, testing the water is extremely important. The water that your fish swims in is pretty much like the air that we breathe. So it is critical that you make sure that the water is within parameters for your species. Now, we have a lot of owners that will try to treat a disease that isn't actually present. So there are a lot of misdiagnosed cases when it comes to fish, especially, down the line if you do end up seeing a veterinarian. So rather than put your fish through the stress of unnecessary treatment, it's really best that you contact an aquatic veterinarian, either through a virtual consult or in person, to make sure that your fish gets the right treatment the first time, rather than putting them through the stress of inappropriate treatments.
Ah, okay, so that's some pretty good advice. All right, let me see. Question number 2. What should people with a sick fish expect if they call a fish veterinarian?
So if a client has a sick fish and wants to make an appointment, this is pretty much the process that you will go through with any veterinary clinic that you might say take your cat or your dog or your horse to. Essentially, we're going to need to get information on what species you're working with, what sort of environment the fish is located in, what's been going on, and for how long, and how many fish are affected. And certainly we want to know what you've already attempted, anything that you might suspect might be in there. And again, when either you bring the fish to the vet or with our service, we come to you. Essentially what we'll do is a visual inspection first, followed by water quality testing. And then we'll usually do a physical exam on the fish, depending on their size and kind of what their temperament is. Certainly a fish that is very down and depressed, we don't want to stress them out further by doing a thorough hands-on exam. But if we need to get, skin or gill biopsies, that might certainly be something that we need in order to determine what's going on with your fish. So yes, there is absolutely a cost associated with veterinary care, but for any pet that you adopt into your home, you should always assume that veterinary care is going to play a part sometime in their life. We wish that all animals were healthy and happy throughout their entire lives, but unfortunately, it's just the cost of having a pet. You need to make sure that you can provide adequate veterinary care for routine, once a year inspections, and certainly if your pet or fish starts to get sick.
None of us want to ever have a sick fish, but I'm one of those people that likes to be prepared. So is there anything that you could recommend that the average hobbyist keep on hand just in case?
I wish there was some magic medicine that we could give all fish to make them feel better. But when it comes to most tank and pet fish species, for freshwater, really the best thing to have in your toolkit is a little additional water conditioner, because sometimes that's the one thing that you run out of and you might have forgotten to add it, or you might need to set up a hospital tank super quick. And we also recommend having some aquarium salt on hand. Doing a very low level, about 1 to 2 parts per thousand, can not only help if there, say, is a parasite issue, but it can take some of the stress off the kidneys and gills to make sure that your fish feels a little bit better. Now, obviously, the opposite is going to be true for saltwater fish. Sometimes you're going to need to lower the salinity a little bit, but it depends on the fish how much of a change they can really tolerate. So that would be a question to ask your veterinarian before you move that fish to a quarantine facility.
Okay, thank you. All right, now last but not least, are there any signs or symptoms that should raise a red flag if we are keeping any sort of fish?
So there's 2 different categories that you can look for to determine if your fish is sick or not. So first we have the physical signs of disease. This is a fish that actually physically looks like there's something wrong with it. So this could be a change in their body appearance. It could be an eye that's popped out. It could be missing scales. It could be them turning a, inappropriate color, say a super red fish. And then we have the behavioral signs of disease. So sometimes these are a little trickier to pick out, but essentially this is a fish that, say, doesn't want to eat, or maybe isn't eating as much as they usually do. Are they swimming appropriately? Are they swimming throughout their entire water column, or are they supposed to just be sitting on the bottom? Are they hiding a lot? So especially in some mixed species tanks, not all fish are going to read the rule book about how nice or accommodating they're supposed to be. So certainly some fish might get picked on a little and therefore are going to be pushed into a hiding spot. So certainly that would be something of concern. And any fish that, is isolating themselves and, trying to put themselves in the tiny, darkest back corner is going to be something of concern. Certainly anything that you see that you're concerned about, you are welcome to take pictures or videos and send them over to your veterinarian, and they'd be able to give you more information about if this fish needs immediate help or if there's some things you can try before they get a veterinary exam.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking a part of your day to spend with us and to give us some advice. We really appreciate it, Dr. Sanders.
Thank you so much for having me on the show today. If anyone has any questions for our office, you can visit us at cafishvet.com. If you are outside of California and Nevada, we strongly recommend that you visit the American Association of Fish Veterinarians at fishvets.org or the World Aquatic Veterinary Medical Association at wavma.org. Thank you, and I hope all your fish stay happy and healthy.
All right, I hope you have enjoyed this video and enjoyed getting to hear and meet Dr. Jessie Sanders. Even though Frank passed away from old age, it is a good reminder to all of us that this can happen to anybody at any time. So it really is better to be prepared than to be caught off guard. All right, this has been Hillary for WaterLogged on behalf of saltwateraquarium.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.